start with the introduction. We have a couple of questions to ask both of you. So, hi, I'm Meera Sahai, a certified metabolic health coach from D-Life. Also, it's Chief Operating Officer, D-Life Healthcare Private Limited. Founded in 2014 by Anup Singh, who's an IIT Roorkee Silver Medalist and Icons of India awardee. D-Life pioneered the low-carb movement in India through Anup. His groundbreaking protocol of 100-gram carbs per day max, given in 2012, made LCHF and type 2 diabetes management possible even for Indian vegetarians. In 2021, he launched the D-Life Diploma course, the only Government of India approved program with the world's largest 144 CPD Hrs credit. Anup and Shashikant Iyengar co-organized India's historic metabolic health conference in 2023 and 2024, and now we are in 2025 into the third metabolic health conferences in the conference. I'll introduce my guests for this session. Anup Bhaskarrao Chaudhary is an Indian researcher in nutrition sciences, having a couple of research papers published in international journals. Anup is also founding director of Public Health India, PHI, an Indian health advocacy organization, and a consultant nutritionist helping a wide range of populations improve metabolic health and quality of life. Anup aims to bring India-specific low-carb data into the literature to help public health researchers, mainstream health professionals, and health organizations make informed decisions in designing and improving treatment strategies for better metabolic outcomes in the members of public. Abhinav Vithalrao Pathare is a public health researcher from India. Both of them are here with us. He received a Master in Science degree in Applied Public Health from the University of Central Lancashire, England in 2020 with merit classification. His master's thesis focused on felicitating low-carb policies in the United Kingdom's national dietary guidelines and received distinction. Abhinav serves as a principal investigator in low-carb related contemporary research projects. He has written multiple journal articles and editorials in various public health topics. Abhinav aims to improve public health outcomes through informed policies, strategies, interventions, and communication techniques. He advocates the whole system approach, WSA, for facilitating low-carb supportive policies, which encourage the interdisciplinary and collaborative approach. Both have multiple publications and are back in MHC Season 3. Welcome, Anup and Abhinav.
Thank you very much for the invitation and the warm welcome, Ira. It's an honor and pleasure to be here with you all three, and of course with Abhinav. Thank you.
Yeah, I think
Thank you
Shashi can
very
take
much.
the first question.
Yeah. Let Abhinav wants to say something.
No, I said thank you. I was unmuted, so.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. So, see, we invited you in MHC 1, MHC 2, when we came to know that you had published the first ever diabetes remission Indian case, Indian diabetes. It was so thrilling that we immediately made an allocation, we made a space for you so that you can pitch in and talk about the study. Now again in MHC 3, the moment we saw your publication on this sugar industry and as well as the CECO model, immediately we thought this gels well with the MHC 3 theme again. So immediately again we made a provision, and then we added one more session today to take you back, because you guys are doing amazing work in India in terms of publishing something which is of very, very importance. And I think the first question will be Anup Singh, because he is very itching to ask a specific question. So Anup, I'll hand over to you. You can ask them the question.
Thank you. Before I ask my question, I would like to highlight that both Abhinav and Anup Chaudhary are engineers.
Okay.
It's going off and on. Anyway, just in case it was missed, both Abhinav and Anup are engineers, and that, being an engineer, I'm very happy to see engineers coming into this nutrition field. Now, my first question would be, what was the primary motivating factor, to look into this? Was there any trigger point or data set that came to mind that, that pushed you into publishing a paper on this?
Okay, so there is a trigger behind taking a decision to write this article, and that trigger point was the humongous amount of money that the sugar industry is putting in proliferating this CECO model. So for instance, So they always say that whatever you eat doesn't matter, you just have to count calories. It is always okay to have their products. So, for instance, in the year 2013, PepsiCo paid a humongous 396 crore rupees to BCCI for getting title rights for Indian Premier League. And Indian Premier League is one of the well-known shows in India, and with a viewership of 400 million people across television and OTT platforms. Then Coca-Cola, for example. So over the last few years, they are spending $4 billion US dollars every year. So if you convert it in Indian rupees, that becomes 35,000 crore Indian rupees. Now that's the it's a monumentous amount of sum that they are putting in to market their product. Then for almost 41 years, McDonald was one of the top sponsors of the Olympic events. And then the list goes on and on and on. Coca-Cola, for example, is the longest partner of Olympic movement, and they are sponsoring Olympic events from 1928. There was one instance when Cadbury was rejected. The sponsorship from Cadbury was rejected in 2012 Olympic by the Olympic Committee, and it was because it was not a good fit in that particular context, because it was a sports event. But the explanation that was given by then CEO of Cadbury was that it is absolutely fine to have their products as far as an individual knows how to balance it with exercise. And then they got that opportunities. They paid some $100 million to Olympic Committee, and then they got the sponsorship. So this is how these are, entering into the field and playing with the science. Now, when I see the apex bodies, so most of them advocate this energy balance model. So the balance model has its roots in thermodynamics. And as I have the engineering background, like Anup said, so I'm having good understanding of thermodynamics, and I always saw inconsistencies in the theories that they are explaining, because the thermodynamics is a concept of physics, and we cannot apply physics on human body. Human body works on biochemistry. And when I saw this inconsistency and the inapplicability of these thermodynamics laws, I started my further investigation, and I explored carbohydrate insulin model, and there I got the solution that what exactly causes obesity. It is not just about how many amount of or how much amount of calories we are eating. It is the endocrinological effect of the calories that is making people fat or obese. So this research article is the symbolism of my effort to informing obesity science to the public. So this is how I get into it.
So how pervasive is the sugar industry's influence in obesity science and sports nutrition? I mean, other than what you told, what other things are we should know?
Correct. So this is a very pertinent question, in fact. So there are basically two ways of pervasiveness, and they are remarkably successful in doing so. So how they do it? So the first thing is that they first downplay the link between their products and obesity. By doing so, they first, delay the public health guidelines and the public health policies. Because see, there are two ways to do this. One is by weakening the public health policies aimed to go towards reduction of sugar intake or sugar consumption, and second is to delay it. So they know the answers for both of these two. So the first one, they will downplay the link between obesity and their products, and that is how they weaken the evidence that is there. And second thing that they do is they create controversies in the science. And by creating the controversies, they delay the implementation of the public health policies. Now, for example, in the year 2016, there is a very good article that was published and it was about sugar sweetened beverages. Now, in that article, what authors did, now the extrapolation of the data and the conclusion that was drawn is for both sports nutrition as well as public health nutrition. Now, what authors did within the span of 2001 to 2016, the research papers aiming towards the link between obesity and the sugar sweetened products. So they excavated all that research and then they analyzed those research papers. And to their surprise, they found that the research papers and systematic reviews and the clinical trials that were supported by sugar sweetened beverage industry SSB, so the investigators was much more likely to find no association at all between their products and obesity and metabolic outcomes,
Right.
compared to the other studies which were funded by some other things or they were self-funded. So that is how they play with the science, and they will always see a chance to exonerate their products. And that is how they either weaken it or they delay the public health outcomes or public health policies.
Yeah, just as an extension of this, Anup and Abhinav, can you highlight some of the more, you already spoke about it, but something that, people can immediately click with and, relate to some glaring examples of industry-funded research which has skewed up, scientific consensus?
Well, this is very interesting, isn't it? Like the biasing in the consensus, but it has led to it. So funding itself is biased away from the topic of importance. For example, BIRAC there is a council in India called as BIRAC. So it's a Biotechnology Industry Research Assistant Council. So BIRAC is a interface between industry and academia for the fundings for the research, the raise fundings, which is a good thing. It's a good strategy. And 74% of the studies that those have been funded by BIRAC are in light of the healthcare research. So it's again a good thing. But where is the biasing happening? It's on the topics of the research. So almost 58.7% of the studies funded by BIRAC were in light of the medical technology. Okay, because medical technology involves certain devices and techniques, and there is a way to commercialize those things. And then 24.5% research was in the therapeutics, and only 3.5% was studies were related to the public health, which we need to inform the chronic diseases. And again, there is no problem, or there is barely a problem of funds, because within the year of 2007 to 2012, in these 5 years, different institutes in India had almost 42 billion Indian rupees for doing research in healthcare. In American dollars, it was like 925 million. But again, only 4% of the fund was allocated for the non-communicable diseases like NCDs, which shares 20% burden of Indian diseases. So the skewing happens before the study starts, before the fund is allotted. They wouldn't even take interest in the research, which will not be whose results will not be used as a commercialization. And of course, whatever research happens, like the tiny amount, and there is this skewing of scientific consensus. Wherever sugar industry is involved, they would shift the blame on the saturated fats and salts, pushing the lipid hypothesis. Whenever the food industry is involved, they would push this calories in, calories out model and then shift the blame on the lack of physical activities. So skewing happens on both of the layers before the research starts and after the research has been completed.
Yeah, so interesting. Anup, your question. Anup's question.
So, what are the primary, Anup, you had touched upon the perception briefly, how they manipulate, but what are the primary, weapons of perception that this lobby uses when it comes to obesity and everything else?
Okay, so this is again an important question to understand, because there is a multiple layers of manipulation. So the first thing that the sugar industry is doing is making people comfortable. They are telling people that it is okay to be obese. And now how they will create the culture of obesity? So they are having multiple solutions for that also. So they will take some obese models on the front cover of the magazine. They will take obese people in the advertisements, and they will set up some statues having belly protruding out in front of the fashion stores selling clothes.
Plus size, they
Now,
call it.
so yeah, plus size or whatever. But you see the picture that they are putting in front of people. It is like to create a culture where people will be very much comfortable with obesity, and they will see that yes, it is fine to be obese. But the real problem that lies here is that obesity always come with some metabolic disorders, and people don't know about it. So it is really perilous to keep people in darkness and saying that obesity is fine, you are absolutely okay. That is one thing. Second important thing is the amount of money that they're spending in in propagating this narrative, which is wrong. So, for example, as advocated by Shu 2013, so he reported it. So, Coca-Cola has this famous quote that if you eat more calories than you burn off, you will gain fat or you will gain weight. And this wrong science they portray is at a common sense. And when people cannot achieve a proper weight after following this advice, they advocate the same concept as, or they advocate this as their personal responsibility. So they will never take a blame on themselves. They will always blame people. You probably is not physically active. You are leading a sedentary lifestyle. This is what they are doing. And on the top of that, there are multiple campaigns they are running. So, for example, in 2010, PepsiCo was having this Let's Move initiative. Then there is Mixify was one campaign that they run. It was specifically targeting the teens. Then there is school beverage policy announcement that they did in 2006. So there are multiple campaigns they are running, and they are ostensibly doing these things by taking health related campaigns where people see that they are promoting it for health, but they are having some different intentions and a vested interest at the cost of public health. So this is very dangerous that they are comforting the people and then they are advertising it, and they are spreading these bad science on the name of public health.
Correct.
Yeah, so they have normalized, basically they are normalizing, obesity.
Yeah,
And the
they are
unfortunate part
setting the
is if you
culture.
call some fat person fat, they retaliate by saying,
Yes.
you're fat shaming us.
Yeah, and fat shaming is now considered as offense.
Yes.
So you cannot do that. So they are creating a culture around us.
How is it that these industry-funded studies still manage all this deception while fooling the public? I mean, you have given us a lot of insight. Is there something else we need to know?
Well, this is a really insightful question, and despite there is a growing body of evidence on the other side, how these things happen. Okay, in every field, there is some profession which is dominant, or whom the public trust, and sometimes blindly trust. And if the industry could buy their image somehow, it works. Indian Medical Association was founded in 1928, and the primary objectives were, of course, like promoting medical studies and public health. But over the years, so far, they have endorsed numbers and numbers and numbers of commercial products, including PepsiCo's. So in 2008, PepsiCo has received endorsement from the IMA. IMA is the apex body of medical doctors, including approximately 350,000 doctors. So they have received an endorsement from that association for the Tropicana juice and the Quaker oats. With both are the products of PepsiCo. You wouldn't find the name PepsiCo there, but some other like children brands. So when such things happen, the industry it gets easier for the industry to buy the trust of the public, because they are buying the image of the people whom the public trust. So this is a very disturbing situation. By the way, I'm not getting into celebrity endorsements because they are the celebrities, but these association and health association endorsements are very dangerous. And again, like instead of promoting or endorsing a bulb which claims to kill 85% of germs, or instead of endorsing a paint which claims to kill 99% of infection causing bacteria on your walls, I am insisting and requesting them to get into the low carbohydrate science, which has a number of studies backing the effectiveness of it in the metabolic health, but they're not doing it. So it becomes easier for the industry to mislead people in a subtle way when there are no strict policies for the associations to take endorsements and exchange money or any other exchanges that they may not tell very clearly. So this is one of the ways it happens. There are many ways, but this is the way I wanted to highlight, because this is the breaching of trust of the public.
It is very ridiculous. It seems something like what has happened with AHA and Crisco. So here we see somewhat in a smaller way what's happening, and it's also ridiculous that that they endorse paint and bulb and everything. Yeah,
And
next.
still, you people are the only one who are getting into the mainstream low carbohydrate conferences.
Yeah, Anup and Abhinav, very, very interesting insights. I just cannot, draw parallels, something as sinister and big as this is happening. Do you think there are any parallels with the big tobacco, thing that happened in the later half of the 20th century, when they were using political manipulation, lobbying tools, misinformation in the public domain just to sell tobacco? Do you see the parallel there?
If this question is about what I think sugar industry has outshined the tactics of tobacco industry. Tobacco is, of course, is a problem, no doubt, and it also has warning labels. But no sugar product so far has a warning label that it causes diabetes. And if this question is about what current data can demonstrate, then of course there are parallels, and these resemblance of tactics and strategies are remarkable. So, for example, there are facets to it. First is funding.
Correct.
Okay, so they would fund the research whose results they can use for commercializations or to distract from the actual solution. All right. So second is publication. They are targeting publications. They want to make maximum interest into the literature, which favors them and downplay the links between sugar and the chronic diseases. This is also one of the parallels that they share, the big tobacco and big sugar. Next is separation of a good science. So John Yatkin from United Kingdom, he had always like pleading in front of the scientific consensus that it's the sugar, it's not the fat that's causing chronic diseases, but got suppressed due to the n number of forces that was skewed towards sugar industry. Next is they criticize the good research, and the thing with the science is that every research has its loopholes. So what they would do, the sugar industry or the big sugar, that hey, there are holes in this study, but there are holes. There are always holes. There were also holes in the studies that linked sugar with the chronic diseases, and there were also holes in the studies which linked saturated fat with the chronic diseases. But instead of filling them up, they would just criticize. They wouldn't constructively criticize it. Or there are evidence that can demonstrate that they'll ensure that these holes will not be filled. Another thing is public relation, as Anup said. it is now a common sense that if you eat more and expend less, you're going to be obese. So they also have that press conferences, public relation campaigns to take care of it. And the most dangerous thing is policy. They want to avoid the legislative actions, and the big tobacco did this for decades and decades and decades after the first link was uh, explored between the big tobacco and lung cancer. And here they are doing the same, as Anup told, that either they would weaken the public health interventions or by downplaying the link, or they would create a controversy and delay the public health interventions that are actually needed for the reduction of the sugar consumption. And unfortunately, these things are working for them. And there are evidence to attest to this, like the internal documents of sugar associations in the history. This can demonstrate clearly what I said now in response to this question.
Yeah. Anup.
Yeah, big tobacco, camel cash is very popular.
Yeah.
If we have gone into the history of how tobacco industry was, publishing that most doctors smoke camel,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, way back. Now extending to, acha, that move more, eat less. As far as diabetics are concerned, largest federally funded study had failed. And it had around 5,000 plus type 2 diabetics, 13 year by design, and they dumped the study after 12 years because there was no link between eat less and move more. So SICO model has failed repeatedly, but still, how do you think this energy balance weaponization has worked till date, and it will work in future also?
So I have a very specific resource and specific uh, thing to share on this. Am I audible? I think Anup, Ira, and Shashikant, your videos are freeze. Hello.
You're
Yes, sir, you
audible
are
to me.
audible.
Okay. So yes, so this is a very important question, and they are still managing to do this and weaponizing the energy balance model. So I have a very specific resource or specific, research paper for this. So this was published in 2016, and the title of this paper is Scientific Organizations and Coca-Cola's War Against Public Health Community. So that was published in 2016. So this article, the story was actually revealed by New York Times in 2015, August 2015 to be precise. So Coca-Cola back then entered in the market with three strategies. The first one was to advance energy balance model as the right framework to deal with obesity. That was their strategy first. Second thing, they they established Global Energy Balance Network, GEBN, it is acronymed as, and they established it by spending $1.5 million. They themselves created it. And then they showed it that it is ostensibly, independent broker. It means that there is no link between Coca-Cola and GEBN, so to speak. And they portrayed it as an independent broker with the scientists having sympathy in alignment with their goal. And the third strategy that they used was to convince policymakers, journalists, and public that it is energy balance model that perfectly defines the obesity science. So they did it by spending this much amount of money. So this is the kind of things that these industry people are doing, and this is just one example. There are many more following this, having very serious implications when we look at the public health. So they have nothing to do with public health. They are just pushing in their products and spreading bad science with these things.
So keeping all this in background, how are this misinformation, they have impacted the sports nutrition?
Well, one of the keys to do good science is to keep an alternative hypothesis in your mind while you check the preconceived idea. So, for example, this is the preconceived idea that carbohydrate is the base or the primary macronutrient for energy, and you cannot eliminate it. It is an indisputable macronutrient for the sports nutrition. This is the preconceived idea. And if there is an alternative hypothesis that you can also use fats instead and in a better way, but this is the but if there is a commercial interest, this key gets diminished. You cannot go on the alternative hypothesis and then accept it. So the correcting nature of the science is in problem when there is big commercial interest or conflict of interest. So what I'm trying to explain is the International Olympic Committee has a nutrition working group which publishes a brochure or guidelines, practical guidelines for health and performance. So both. And then there is a medical commission involved in it, International Olympic Committee's medical commission, athletes commission, which is, of course, it's very relevant. But Coca-Cola is a partner with the nutrition working group of International Olympic Committee. And when this happens, it's very hard to imagine that there is no influence on the current advice. So if you could see that practical guide published by the International Olympic Committee, it still relies, like it may acknowledge on few instances that different macronutrients are required for different purposes inside the body, but they would simultaneously they will also talk about the energy balance theory, and still the carbohydrates are pushed as the primary nutrient for sports nutrition. So unless we don't eliminate these commercial partnerships from as prestigious nutrition working group as of International Olympic Committee, CICO and the CIM model will not get its justice because the moment they will acknowledge that different calories are metabolized in a different way and you cannot outrun its effect by simply exercising, they are not just only losing the sports nutrition, but they are losing a lot of their products which are now leading in the markets.
Yeah, Anup and Abhinav, very interesting to know these. And as a repercussion and also as an extension of this question, do you think elite athletes are being misled into over-reliance on carbohydrates due to food and in beverage industry messaging?
Yes, absolutely. So as Abhinav said that this high carbohydrate advice has penetrated into sports nutrition advice and the guidelines. So we have so many examples that these athletes in various sports are suffering, or they are facing a lot of metabolic challenges. They are getting obese. So for instance, marathon running is considered as one of the highest form of calorie burning exercise. But then there are examples where marathon runners are gaining weight within the span when they're into that sports. So it is a classic failure of CICO model. But then these kind of news they will never allow to come into the market or into the media. And then there are so many examples from the other sports also that I can gather. But here, the major problem that I see is the new generation of athletes because they follow these elite athletes. So they are more vulnerable to this bad science. So they are to be protected. So yes, there is a problem, and elite athletes are also, the victims of this bad science.
And, being a victim of bad science, I would say Professor Knox, the ultra marathon
Correct.
runner,
Yeah,
doing everything right, and he turned diabetic. The moment he started talking about low carb, way of running, I think his sports gel company canceled his contract,
correct.
right? That's on paper, I think. And he has mentioned it somewhere in his book or somewhere. Now, coming back to, this, all this uh, obesity has been normalized. You cannot fat shame, right? So, and since you both are researchers doing a lot of number crunching, obesity versus metabolic, though although obesity is also part of metabolic disease, but other metabolic diseases, what is the exact, relation, correlation, if we talk in terms of numbers?
Uh, can you repeat the question? I'm not understanding it.
See, this misdirection of rising obesity, that this has been normalized, right? And this has been normalized, so people are getting into other metabolic syndrome like diabetes, hypertension. So, do you have any numbers like how this obesity, rise in obesity, and other diseases, how are they connected
Or to put it
in
in
terms of?
Yeah, yeah.
perspective, what he means is what is the real world impact, how it is happening.
Yes.
Real world impact. Okay. So, real world impact of this science, the energy balance model, is enormous and it is obnoxious actually, because as stated by three legendary people working in this low carbohydrate space, Dr. Asim Malhotra, Professor Knox, and Steve Finney. So they published an article in British Journal of Sports Medicine in 2015. So if carbohydrates is merely necessary for exercise, it would be of little concern to public health or little problem to the public health. But the growing concern is that the insulin resistant athletes are at higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes if they continue eating high carbohydrate diets for long. So now, because high carbohydrate diet actually worsens the condition called insulin resistance. Now, if we see, athletes are or vulnerable to diseases because they are the one who are following this ubiquitous advice of exercise and counting calories or taking care of nutrition. So they are doing that already as per the suggestions that they are getting from the authorities, but they are also at the risk of developing type 2 diabetes and other metabolic diseases, and we have numerous examples for this. There are cricketers who have gone through heart diseases or have died through heart diseases, and from other sports also there are a lot of examples. So if these athletes are at risk, then if we think of the normal public who are just blindly following these guidelines, what will happen to them? This is really disconcerting and very unsettling to me, that to see the picture that the future is very dark in metabolic health.
Yeah, Saurav Ganguly at young age of, I don't know what his age was, suffered from cardiac event.
Yeah, there are many
Yeah.
more.
Yeah,
There are
no,
many.
nobody could have been more, active than a cricketer,
Yeah.
through his life, all through his life.
And Anup, also I have a tiny insight to build on what you asked about the numbers.
Yeah.
So there are numbers, there are always the numbers, and then there is an argument between the percentage and the total numbers. But the problem is that the bedrock problem here is the controversy they create around. So let us suppose obesity is extremely prevalent. Diabetes is a capital. Like India is the capital of diabetes. It has been coined many of times. But the fact, and this is a fact, that correlation does not mean causation. So they will use this to again confuse to people or to criticize the research, and rightly so, because correlation does not mean necessarily the causation. So if two things are going, like sugar production in India is rising and the obesity is on rise, even if you have these numbers, these only establish the correlation. And for establishing causation, it needs randomized controlled trials. And then again, it goes to the fundings and the skewing and the biases and all. So it's really like, if you don't want to agree, you just confuse people. That's what they use, the philosophy.
Yeah, correlation not equal to causation, cherry picking, I would say, to defend their product, but criticize meat at the same time.
Yeah,
Right.
correct. Both ways. It works both ways for them.
So,
Yes, sir.
so with so many issues which you told, how do we as consumer, a lay person, or even a professional for the matter, they understand or they can identify the conflict of interest?
Well, this is very tough. I mean, I would, of course, I would start with encouraging to read the conflict of interest section in the research paper.
Read it
And
first. Read it first before going through the paper.
yeah, disclosure first. But if it was only that simple, that they would clearly acknowledge everything there. There are instances that prestigious universities have sometimes did not disclose what they had to at the time. So it's very tough to understand that. But what I would like to highlight here, biases happens on multiple layers. So, and the most vulnerable spot is the agenda of research. So, first of all, they will influence the agenda of research, the question you ask. So, for example, you take some people, starve them, and they will lose weight, but that doesn't explain anything about why they got obese in the first place. So they would interfere with the agenda of research. They would only set the question in the way that the answer will benefit them. So it starts way early. And then there are biases in the methodology and how they conduct the research. So you have to look into that, how they selected the participants. For example, Ansel Keys' study, he cherry picked the data for 7 countries, whereas the data was available for many countries. And then again, the biases happens in the results, how they interpret their results, and how they discuss their results. And again, the biases happens while disseminating the health communication to the people. Sometimes, as you said, that sometimes they use this correlation thing to defend them, and sometimes they use this correlation thing to for their benefit. Always, by the way. So it's very tough to understand, but whatever the institutions and the groups that are mentioned in the disclosures, read about them, because they would not always straightforward mention PepsiCo or Coca-Cola. They would mention the councils or agencies or the groups that they made, and then to mention their name in the research to avoid the direct names.
Or
Yeah,
Howard. Or
yeah.
Howard. Yes, sugar lobby, they bribed a professor at Howard, I think, to bring a bad name to fat.
Yeah,
This corruption goes back, centuries, I mean, if not centuries, decades back.
yeah, it is like
And that was out in the media now.
Yeah,
like
Anup, I would like to quickly know from you one last question we can still, squeeze through. Is there any major sports organization or a governing body that has finally started not acknowledging the role of diet over just exercise?
So yes, there are major bodies now acknowledging the role of diet. So, but the problem here is that they're acknowledging the role of diet, but alongside exercise.
Hmm.
And if we look at the diet that they are recommending to athletes or a particular sports or maybe for a better public health outcomes, this they are still revolving around the high carbohydrate, theory. So, for example, in the International Association of Athletic Federation (IAAF), so if you read their consensus published in 2019, they are still recommending high carbohydrate based diet for athletic performance for endurance sports, and importantly, they are still considering carbohydrate as a supreme source of energy, and the amount of carbohydrates that they are recommending is somewhere around 7 to 12 gram per kg body weight per day. So for example, an athlete is 60 kgs of weight, and if you consider mean of that value somewhere around 10 grams, it becomes 600 grams of carbohydrates in a day. That's the plethora of carbohydrates which is going to put anyone into the risk of metabolic health. Then there is ICMR and NIN from India. Then there is ACSM, American College of Sports Medicine. These all are acknowledging the role of diet, but uh, all of them are revolving around that concept called energy balance model, and none of them are considering fat as a good source of energy. So that's the problem.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Anup. As much as we would like to, have more of, these conversations, maybe in a D-Life podcast sometime very soon. But thank you so much, both of you, for coming and speaking on the calorie burning myth, sugar companies' influence in obesity, science, and sports. You can follow both Abhinav and Anup on Instagram and Twitter. Both of them are there, and follow their work. Thank you so much for coming over and speaking to us, both of you. Thank you, Anup, Shashi.